You're listening to What's Contemporary Now, a show about culture and the people, places, and things that together make it up.
After 11 years of drama studies, getting fired from every previous job, and realizing that being tamed simply isn't his jam, Lyas has found his lane, and we're all the better for it. With an exuberance that stands in stark contrast to fashion's tendency to cannibalize itself, his style of storytelling feels reminiscent of the glory days that first made so many of us fall in love with the culture of creativity. Today we talk about the journey that brought him here, the film projects we can eagerly anticipate, and even stumble into moments that he described as feeling a bit like therapy. True to form, he treated the conversation itself as another stage, but seemed more than willing to pull back the curtain.
This is Lyas, and we're talking about what's contemporary now.
Lyas, how many people call you Lyas?
Too many. Way too many. But it's okay. It's a made-up name, so you can pronounce it as you want.
This is true. I'm not going to lie. About 5 minutes ago, I was still calling you Lyas, so I appreciate the correction. We always start at the beginning with our guests and ask about their childhood, the formative experiences, and the things that might have set them upon the path they tread today. So tell us about yours. We want to hear everything.
I grew up in Rouen in Normandy, where Joan of Arc was burnt at the stake. So it's a town full of history. So many important figures of France are from there, including myself. No, I'm kidding. But Monet, he painted the cathedral there in different seasons, which is one of his most famous work. Everyone is from there. But it's this middle-aged city filled with history, but not so much contemporary history, which is what I cared about most. So at one point, I had to move out and come to Paris, which felt crazy. It was so stimulating to see all these people being free and themselves without restrictions. And so I found my place, I think, in this city by going out at night and by exploring parts of myself, by dressing up and discovering new inspirations as well through conversations with people. And I really created a community, or there's a community that was very present in the Paris of when I started hanging out in. And it really built up my taste for fashion, for cinema, for arts. And it made me feel like finally I belong.
What were you like before the move? I mean, obviously that's a very different cultural environment to exist within, and you have such a huge personality.
Well, I feel like I always somehow was myself, maybe not at home, but I was exploring, again, different parts of myself through different friend groups and different people that I hung out with, because I changed the high schools. I never had the same friends throughout my education. Mm-hmm. So every time I changed friend groups, I had a different personality, and somehow they all are parts of myself. None of them is truer than the other. I think they all exist in their multitude.
Well, you spent 11 years in drama and later studied directing in Paris. So what was it that first led you to drama, other than the obvious tropes?
What are the obvious tropes?
The young, cool, cultured gay boy in a small town who finds his crowd. Theater is always that outlet for interesting people.
That's true, actually. I loved making people laugh. Mm-hmm. Like the first play that we did, it was du théâtre de boulevard, un vaudeville, which was playing a lot on body humor. And I was like disarticulated in front of the audience, and seeing them laugh so much, I was like, okay, there's a direct reaction that I can quantify. And I love that. I feel like now through social media, I can also have that direct reaction that I can quantify.
Well, that was another thing I wanted to jump into. 11 years is a significant time, especially being as young as you are, right? So I would imagine that to be a very formative experience. And then your decision to pursue directing, which we'll also touch upon later, because I think that's still a dream that's one day going to come true. But how did those early experiences with things like drama shape the way you view performance, costume, storytelling, and all the stuff you touch upon in the work you do today?
I don't know exactly, but I know that for me, it allowed myself to create characters in which I felt more comfortable. And fashion allows me to do that as well. But yeah, when I was playing a character in school at Conservatoire, that's where I was in Rouen, it always made sense or came together with the outfits that I put on. I remember we had this big room full of costumes, and it was the most joyous I ever felt being in that room and being able to see the characters before even I learned the part, because I could literally see the dress in front of me. And that's how a character started for me. And it still does.
Yeah, well, even in your reviews, right? You extract particular looks to tell a story that was your perception of the overall show, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Thank you for noticing.
Of course. Well, something else you touched upon, and then we'll kind of move on from the childhood, but I feel like it's a source of inspiration, is that you've felt the worst when you felt the most tamed. So can you elaborate on what that means? I would assume it was your younger years, but it feels like something a lot of people would relate to.
Yeah. And it still is true now. I don't know. I always struggled with that. I remember my family telling me that now they're amazing, but it was a struggle growing up. And I remember my dad telling me, stop being so theatrical, stop being like, be true. And I'm like, but this is true to me. There is some truth in being fake, And when people try to tame me and make me feel like I could not like be so theatrical or talk a certain way or behave a certain way, it touched a part of me that's so deep. Like it comes back to my worth, my self-worth. You are trying to challenge that, because apart from that, I really don't know what I am. I feel like I am that theatrical being.
Jumping from then through to present day, like how does that inform the way you show up in the world today? Obviously, you're a very performative person.
I always feel the best when I am performing. For me, there's no other option for me than to perform and to see life as such. And having an audience makes it, way more easy. That's why I love going out, having friends, and being like able to perform for people.
Well, even within the theatrics, you've said that you love the everydayness of fashion as much as its theatricality. So how does that construct your sense of self or the way you kind of instinctually show up? Or is it always a performance?
I feel like it's always a performance, whether I want it or not, because also I don't have basic clothing. My parents, when I come back, they're like, why do you dress like this? And I'm like, I cannot not do it. It's really something so deep in myself. I love this therapy moment, but I don't know what it means, but it's something that's just so true. It feels like I'm betraying myself if I try to blend in.
It is interesting the way people who grew up facing a certain degree of adversity eventually don't feel comfortable fitting in. Like it feels much safer to stand out somehow, right?
Yeah.
You did have a period of living rent-free in Paris, right? That was kind of your jump, a little bit of a starting pad.
Oh my God, yes. That's amazing, because I've always been lucky, but this was very lucky. So my apartment that I was staying in the 18th in Paris, it was deemed unsanitary by the state or the town hall. And so right before COVID, they suspended the rent. Like no one pays rent until they do the construction work required to the norm. And thanks to COVID, all the construction work got delayed 1 year, 2 years, and then it cost too much money because of COVID. No one had money. So for 3 years, I did not pay rent, but I was living in a perfectly sane, I guess, apartment. Just the common areas were a bit fucked up. But I didn't mind. So for free, I was living in Paris, and I was receiving government aid for the rent. So like 200 euros a month to help me pay the rent, but I didn't pay the rent. So I had 200 euros a month to live in Paris.
I mean, let's also be real, because Paris is incredibly affordable, in my opinion, and compared to cities like New York.
Oh, really?
Of course, you can get gorgeous apartments for what feels like half the price. You can buy enough desserts at the bakery for an entire party, and it's like 22 euros. Like everything is very affordable in Paris, I find.
Yeah, true. But New York is through the roof.
No, it's ridiculous. At this point, it's a joke. But we're talking about that as a good launching pad. So at what point did that then shapeshift into this fashion space and what it is that we know you for now?
Well, because of that, I had time to develop so many projects. I always had my mind full of ideas and shit that I could do. And so I was trying to get a movie produced for 2 years, couldn't do it. So then I was like, okay, the clock is ticking. Let's try to think of something that is doable now. So I wrote this thing. It's a comedy, little sketches about fashion where I was the Balenciaga boy, the Rick Owens boy, the Celine boy, and like making fun of the tropes of those characters, what makes them them. And so I shot this pilot in my room, which was really cool, actually, really fun. And I went to see Loïc Prigent
Mm-hmm.
and to pitch him the idea of like, I think we should do that for your YouTube channel. You should go back into humor. We should do that. And he loved the idea, but he took too long to reply. And I was waiting every day for his reply and he didn't reply. Love him, but I had to go see someone else.
Yeah.
I'm hungry, And so I went to see GQ Friends.
Mm-hmm.
And GQ Friends, because I knew a friend that worked there,
Mm-hmm.
I showed him the project and they loved it right away. They were like, let's fucking do it. So we did it. We did it together. And the first episode, it blew up like 3 million views when I reposted it, not when they posted it. So they got mad. There was a little thing. They were like, you got the views. We didn't. And I was like, but it's the same thing. It's our project. So after that, they didn't want to continue this project, which was surprising for me because it went so well. I was really sad for quite some time because they canceled my show, And so I had to find another way to talk about fashion from my room with no production or magazine behind. And so I started doing it, green screen style, like a lot of people did. And somehow it took off.
But even in the content or in this interview or pretty much anywhere I've ever seen you, there's this exuberance to what it is you do. It's very sincere. It's very genuine as far as how excited you are. And it's kind of contagious as a kind of relationship to fashion, which is something that I admire because I do feel like a lot of the media is so saturated with updates about like declining sales and threats to our creative future. So how is it that you stay so buoyant and kind of excited about things?
It really comes down to my feelings. I get excited by stuff. And I try to cherish that. I try to not lose it. Everyone told me, don't ever lose this. I think the more shows you go to, the more you can lose it. But
why is that?
I don't know. At the beginning, it's so exciting. You don't know anyone. You don't know the models. You don't know if it's going to be good, if it's going to be bad. Now it's like, I kind of know most of the people that are at the show. The models are my friends. I know that the collection is not going to be really good because a lot of people told me before.
Mm-hmm.
But when it's good, it still is exciting to me. And a lot of shows really excite me so much. Mostly the young designers, Duhan Lanting and stuff. And they are the people that I think we have to cherish and like take care of because they bring the passion again to this industry.
So what are your thoughts then on the kind of like commercial pressure these brands are under to survive or the lack of infrastructure they're given in comparison to those under these huge conglomerates like LVMH or Kering?
I feel like the brands got too hungry and they went too big at some point and now they have to sustain this huge business that they have and it makes it very complicated. How could Sabato De Sarno succeed to Alessandro Michele, which had changed the face of Gucci? It's complicated.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot of pressure. But also I try not to think about all of that because then it makes it too complicated to critique a collection.
No, that's fair. But going back to this idea of keeping that excitement and the sort of, shiny, bright spirit that people have told you to never lose, the more successful and the more widely recognized you become, the stakes get higher, right? And so one has to wonder at what point you end up starting to think about what it is you're saying or what it is you're putting out in the world or risking being more media trained or more filtered. Is that ever something that comes up or do you kind of feel unconcerned about that?
Well, I told myself since the beginning that I will never be like media trained or I will never be like those celebrities that I see. But maybe I am becoming like those people. I don't know. I just try to be as true to myself as I can. And even if that means making some enemies along the way, because I'm very honest, I think that can become a problem in the future. But for now, I think I'm pretty okay.
It never feels contrived by any means, which I think is why it's so appealing to so many people.
Yeah, and it really isn't. At some point, I was scared, When I was in my room talking about the shows, it was easy because I didn't get invited. So it was so easy for me to talk shit about the brand. But when I started getting invited at the beginning, I was like, fuck, now it's a different game. Now I have to adjust how I talk about things because I want to keep the relationship. I want to somehow make money if I can. And then the Dior show happened. And it was in September. They invited me for the first time. And I went to the show and I was so disgusted by this collection and by the reaction that I saw around me from everyone. Everyone told me, yeah, it was bad, but you cannot say it. And really, it made me question my place in the industry and if I even wanted to be in this industry, if I had to shut my mouth because someone told me to. I'd rather get fired like I did from Hollister than, stay in an industry that will tame me. So I decided to speak up. I decided to talk about how bad I thought the collection was. And I did. And since that day and all the repercussions it brought, I am honest. I realized that this is the most important thing. This is my integrity. And, if I lose everything, at least I'll still have that.
Absolutely. It's a beautiful cliche to embrace. So how do you describe what you do? Obviously, there's a commentator component, there's a creator element, but there is a differentiation in your own opinion between what it is you do and, say, someone like Vanessa Friedman at the New York Times.
Yes, because also she has to report to someone. I don't. I try to make it light as well. I try to make it fun. I try to democratize somehow. I feel like Vanessa, love her, love Kathy Horin, love so many people in this business, but it can be a bit elitist and I don't think it's really democratic or a democratic way to talk about this industry. My goal is really to make fashion understandable for people like my family, my dad, my brother. They don't know fashion, but if they listen to one of my videos, I feel like they could. If they spoke English, they don't. I really try to make it accessible. I really want to talk to people like me.
And who are people like you? Because I feel like someone might look at you and definitely think you're a fashion elite. I mean, you're in the right rooms, you're around the right people, you look the right way.
Yes, but the way I talk about it breaks that down. I could be in those circles and be in the rooms and pretend like I would better than everyone and try to speak in ways that are not really digestible for people. But no, my tone has to stay relevant to the people.
It makes sense. So that's what you would say fashion literacy means to you, is making sense of it all to the people.
Yeah.
Outside of the inner circles.
Yes.
That's fair. So at the risk of asking a very kind of big question, what role do you think fashion plays in the larger culture? Without taking it too seriously, obviously, I would imagine you have a perspective on that.
Yeah, I don't know. It makes me think of Demna's impact on fashion, but also culture. And quite frankly, maybe more than that, because I feel like the way he brought streetwear to this luxury thing means something politically. It's a communication between the streets and high fashion and back as well. When he started dressing Kanye, when Kanye was still relevant, I feel like he changed the way we saw celebrities as well, how they dressed. Everything changed all of a sudden with Kike wearing this because of Kanye and because of Demna. I think changed culture. The triple S, it made things that were so distasteful suddenly desirable. And I think just that is changing the world,
That's a good answer. And why do you think the stocks plummeted at such rapid rates based on that announcement?
Because it comes with the scandal. It still is attached to it. I mean, whenever I post a video of Balenciaga, a lot of people in the comments are like, you support the pedophiles. I'm like, what?
How do you view the role of criticism in culture at a time where some people think we could benefit from actually having more informed critical thinking?
Yeah, I don't think maybe the comment section is not the right place to have those conversations, but sometimes it is. I remember I was shocked at the beginning when I started TikTok to see that people were debating something in the comments that was not related to the video that I was making. I was like, what? And I love that though. It's a community building. It's like people share their experiences, their disagreements in the comments within like 100 characters, which I think is interesting. I mean, we cannot fight it anyway, so we have to welcome it. But I think my role to comment on things is important because no one is honest. And I feel like some people are, but most of the people aren't. So it's very important to have honesty in fashion because we have it in a lot of other arts. I mean, you can critique a movie and still be invited to the next premiere. In fashion, you can. And that's a huge problem, I think, that I try to take into my own hand. And also, I feel like criticism, by making it accessible for everyone, is the most democratic thing that I could do. Again, to share my excitement, my disappointment to people that have asked nothing of me, I think it is democratic.
And at what point did you start to feel as though you had an authority to make those statements? Or has it always happened under the banner of personal opinion? So it kind of feels more permissible.
I think I developed a God complex along the years. This level of delusion that I had to put onto myself, or that, in order to believe that one day I'll amount to something, made me believe that my opinion was the only one that was right, Whether it's true or not, I don't know. Obviously not. But yeah, that delusion allowed me to have the confidence to talk about it. And some people related to it, which fueled my delusion and complex even more. No, actually now I am more open to other opinions than I was before.
I don't know if I've just missed certain examples of your content, but I certainly have never felt like you speak in absolutes. To me, it always feels like personal, anecdotal takes on larger conversations. It never feels like you're dictating something in any sort of prescriptive way.
No, true. Because also I interpret quite a lot the runways, and I try to build the stories, and that obviously isn't an opinion. Oh, it's subjective. And I think that's the beauty of it as well. It's just that when I started, it was more of a truth. Even those interpretations, I really believe that everyone thought that. I thought we all thought the same way when I was younger, when I started. And I realized that no, it's more subjective, I guess.
Well, you also love to write, which tells me that you are, of course, a voracious reader. So who are some of your favorite writers, whether or not it's fashion or any other kind?
What have I read recently? I read White, Bret Easton Ellis. That was interesting. A bit conservative, I thought, but I don't read that much. I should read more. Is that disappointing?
No, not at all. But typically when someone loves something, they consume a lot about that thing they love. And as someone who loves to write, according to past interviews I've seen with you, I would assume you love to read.
But I don't like to write books. I write screenplays. I like to write stories that make sense in a visual form for me. And in that way, I read a lot of scripts of movies that I can put visuals onto. You know what I mean? I mean, you can always imagine it, but I like to imagine it if I can make it become real. So that's why I love writing movies or scripts, is that my delusion things that I can actually make it.
Well, because you can, right? He who thinks he can, what is that? He who thinks he can and he who thinks he can't are both usually right. So let's dive into that. You still want to be a director. Let's talk about film. Let's talk about other projects.
Yeah, I was actually writing before this call. I wrote this one movie that's so good. I'm really happy with it because I had this idea in August last year, so like nearly a year ago. And I went to see this producer guy that I knew and he loved it. And then we rewrote it together with the producers 6 times. And now we finally have this version that is amazing and that I really believe it can be an impactful movie, or at least one that I really want to see. which I think is the most important thing. It's a bit complex because it doesn't talk about fashion at all. It's not about fashion. And I feel like I need to start with something that talks about fashion or that touches some parts of this industry that I am currently in. So I wrote another movie. It's a short, we're talking shorts. And this one is a satire about the fashion industry. It's also really good. And we're going to start with this one. I was with the producers yesterday and they really think it's fundable and sellable. So I'm happy.
I did want to ask you, what sort of movie do you feel like the world needs right now? But it sounds like you have a couple in the works already.
Yeah. You know what? I don't necessarily think about what the world needs. Actually, that's not true at all, what I just said. It's not true. I do think about that, but not in that way. I think about politically, what do I want to say? What do I want to add to the conversation? And where do I want to put my point of view somehow? So the first one is about the movie that's not about fashion. It's about this young Arab kid that comes to France, that arrives, and on his first day, his head is full of dreams. You know, he has this idea of France that it's going to be such a welcoming place. He's not that naive, but still, it's the land of the possible, you know? On the first night, he's going to be confronted by a reality that's going to change the course of his life in France. So that's the first one.
I mean, that definitely sounds a great deal more in depth than the satirical fashion take, but the satirical fashion take is first in line, you said, right? So what kind of timeline can we expect around getting a chance to put eyes on that?
I feel like it's going to be next year because we're going to film it this year, but then it has to go to the festivals and stuff. So I don't know exactly when you can see it, but I can tell you that it's about how difficult it is to be creative in an industry that is relying so much on the commercial aspects.
Wow, I love that. So it's definitely charged. No, I mean, it makes sense, right? Because you have a creative industry that's ironically built on a growth model that strangles creativity along the way.
Right? There's something that I want people to see and to feel when they watch something that I do is that I want them to feel everything. And that's really something that I care about, that I want them to laugh, but also to cry if they have to be scared, to have adrenaline. I want them to feel everything, which is quite ambitious, but I think it's the most cathartic experience one can have. And that's what art is, no?
Absolutely. What is your relationship to things like highs, lows, anxiety, and anything else that maybe differs from the perfect presentation that you have?
Perfect. I'm not so perfect.
I mean, I wouldn't say perfect in the context of being contrived, but you're definitely like a very happy looking person.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Actually, some of my friends back in the day were telling me, why are you always happy? And I was like, well, don't you want me to be? Is that such a problem? And then it made me think and it got me into anxiety. I was like, wait, maybe I'm hiding something. Maybe there's something deep down that is very sad and that's why I'm always happy. But then I was like, I feel like I would know it, you know?
Yeah, totally.
So no, I am genuinely quite constant in my mood. I'm always quite happy. Of course, there's highs, there's lows, which come with mostly with anxiety and work-related stuff. But since I stopped smoking weed, it helped a lot. Weed was making me, I thought it was freeing my mind, but I think it was making it go in circles. And that created anxiety quite a lot. So I stopped in August, actually, same time I wrote the first movie. And since then, it's been way better.
I was only asking because what you're describing in the context of these film projects is a sufficiently robust narrative, right? There's depth to your storyline, there's consideration, there's humanity. And you can't generally be the creative source of something like that in the absence of your own ability to feel those things. So it just made me curious.
Yeah, no, you're right. I feel like I'm a very politically charged being. I really care about stuff and I care about what's right, what's wrong. I think that this comes from my family being very left and from two ethnicities. Also, I'm gay. So I think all these things make me a political being. I cannot stand when on dating apps I see no political opinion. Fuck you. What do you mean? How can you not have one?
Well, dating apps, this is totally irrelevant to the conversation, but I have to ask you only because it's come up so much in conversations in general with people lately. What do you think of dating apps? Like, are they natural to your generation? Or are they just as disjointed to you as they are to everyone else?
I grew up with them. I never go on dates. I just scroll and look at people. I'm like, oh, you're cute. And then I never really talk because when there's too many choices, you can focus on one. So I think it's the danger of it. And then there's Grindr, which whenever I use it, I hate myself the day after. And like, I don't know, my love life is not really giving.
I mean, isn't that the trade-off for success a lot of the time?
Do you think so?
I don't actually think so. I just feel like it's a movie kind of thread that you'll always see, right? That line in Devil Wears Prada about your personal life hanging on by a thread and then you know you're time for promotion. Do you not remember that?
Fuck, you're right. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we've talked about fashion, childhood, film, politics, creativity, identity, therapy. So what would you say is contemporary now?
I want to have a good answer. It's quite pessimistic. I don't want to say that, but hatred.
Wow. That's a bold statement.
But you can fight it with more love, so it's okay.
Doesn't that feel like a timeless statement? Isn't that kind of the nature of existence?
Maybe, but I'm just living in this time frame, so I don't know about before. I just know about now, and what seems contemporary is hatred.
I don't even know how to respond to that.
You can't, Christopher.
I'm not disagreeing. It's just like, how do you end on that?
We finish on that note.
Can you imagine? The most jovial guest we've ever had ends with the word hatred.
Oh, fuck. Yeah, no. Sadly, it somehow is. But I think it's a sign that we should all come together and fight it.
Absolutely.
You know, like the protect the dolls. It's a sign of that. Against hatred, we all come together because we don't have a choice. And I think that's when the communities get the strongest, when times are hateful.
You're certainly the responsive light to that darkness, and we appreciate your time. Thank you so much for the entertaining conversation, mister.
Thank you a lot, Christopher.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of What's Contemporary Now. A special thanks to our producer, Sasha Grinblatt. Audio post-production by Chase Coughlin with original theme music by Joseph Topmiller and Chase Coughlin of The Black Soft. And visual design by Aaron Meager and Graham Prentice. Subscribe now to be the first to catch new episodes each week. And if you've enjoyed listening, we'd love to hear from you. Leave us a review and let us know your thoughts. Your feedback helps us improve and reach more listeners like you. Follow us on Instagram and LinkedIn for additional content and join the conversation. Let us know what you think is contemporary now.